Hello and welcome to the Moms Who Know podcast. I'm your host, Chanel Nielsen, and I'm super excited to have Heather Ogden on the show today. Heather, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Chanel.
Yeah, well, I am excited because a few months ago, we had Heather's husband, Nathan, on the show. And some of you will remember that call. We talked to Nathan, who was in a ski accident and broke his neck. And as Nathan and I chatted, he said, my wife would be a really great guest to have on your show. And the more I thought about it, the more I liked the idea, because I thought, we hear so much when we hear something like Nathan's story, like, oh my gosh, we think about him and his physical pain and all the changes that he's had to go through. And then it's easy to put the family in kind of that supportive role. So I'm really interested to talk to Heather today and kind of see what that is like for her as a wife, as a mom, just kind of how that's affected you, Heather. So we'll dive right in. I want to go ahead and start. So when you got married, your husband was healthy and everything's good and, bright futures ahead. And I want to talk about, after the accident, kind of how you personally had to adjust your plans and adjust your expectations for what your marriage and your family were going to look like.
Yeah, I was young at the time. I was 24. And so as a 24-year-old, and I had two kids at the time, one was 11 months old and the other one was 2.5. I was pretty young and naive, my world had just started kind of coming together with learning how to be a mom and how to be a good wife, and to have my husband all of a sudden go from this. He played collegiate soccer, he could do everything, hunt and run, and anything he tried his hand at, he seemed just really good at. And so to have him go from this just amazingly fit and physical person to somebody now that has all of his physical capabilities taken from him was quite an adjustment, to say the least. And I can remember just in the first few days of just trying to process it all. I think that was a big, process to go through, of just, how do I now take over different roles that I didn't want, or how are my roles changed as a mother and a wife to now I'm like, do I need to be the breadwinner? Do I need to be the one to take control over the whole household situation? And so I think a lot of those things had to come quickly to me as the events unfolded, I guess. And I quickly realized that I didn't have a lot of time to mourn, or I didn't have a lot of time for emotions. And I kind of went into what I call rock mode. And I just realized I had to just be ready for anything that was thrown in my path almost right from the get-go. And so I feel like I almost didn't have time to mourn the loss of not my husband completely, but the husband that I knew, and the physical side of my husband, who would run and be able to carry me around, or I could jump on his back. So.
And the future that you expected. So there was a lot to mourn and a lot of changes. Talk to me a little bit about what that rock mode, that phrase, what you mean by that.
Rock mode to me, I think it is good and bad, because I feel like rock mode helps you get through the really stressful situations where you just can't have emotion in the way at all. So it helps you to just be on your game 100%. You're ready if there's any medical issues, or if there's problems with your kids, that you just turn and you deal with it, kind of like a first responder would. And I feel like that's how I would go about any of my life. Because at any time, Nate would either have his SATs drop with oxygen levels, and that would be more of an emergency need, or he could fall out of his chair, and that was more of an emergency need. So I just realized that if I had emotion in my life during that time, I couldn't think clearly. I either had to be a caretaker, or caregiver, or a wife. And I had to be that caregiver at that time, kind of in that more rock mode of not thinking emotionally, even though I loved him and I cared for him in a way with love, but I definitely didn't think necessarily with my heart. I kind of thought more on a logical level.
Okay, that makes sense. And I can see how that even might be almost necessary to do that and to kind of turn off so you can just focus on what needs to be done without, collapsing into tears every few minutes. Because I think you could go the other way and just be so overwhelmed with emotion that you aren't able to do what needs to be done.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
how long did that kind of last before you felt like you felt yourself again or allowed that emotion to come back in?
I really feel like it actually took a couple of years. And I know that sounds so crazy, but at times I would let myself kind of let my guard down and kind of relax and try and go back into just that wife mode or motherly mode. And with Nathan's story, he broke his neck snow skiing in December of '01. But then just over a year later, in February of '03, he got pneumonia really bad and was taken in for x-rays, and he fell off the x-ray table and broke his neck again. And so I think because I had only had really a year in between those two major, life-altering events in his life and my life, it just kind of kept me in that rock mode of no emotions yet. You don't know. At any time you could lose your husband. At any time he could have another accident. And with the second paralysis, it had greater deficit on his spinal cord, which, means less movement for him. He lost his triceps and hands and stuff like that. So I just felt like for probably the first 2 or 3 years, I lived in that rock mode. And some people say that I pulled away even emotionally from the rest of my family and friends because I did not know how to be in this acute stage of these trials, but then also to live a normal life as well. And so it was a real hard balance that I probably didn't do very well, but I did the best that I could for what I was given at the time.
Yes. And yeah, like you said, I mean, to have those two, maybe, it would have been a shorter amount of time if that had only been the one accident. But of course, there were two huge life altering accidents there. And yeah, of course, that's going to take some time to process and to get through. So talk to me about how you came out of it a little bit and how you came back emotionally and how you were able to go from living in the just day to day and get through and do all those things to feel more whole and to feel kind of get back to where you were or to a new place more likely.
So I feel like I had started doing that throughout the next few years, just slowly realizing I had to make myself a priority. I would go and get a massage because my muscles would be so sore from stress or lifting Nate. I would go and do girls' lunches out, or I would watch a chick flick. I mean, just little things that I knew were kind of filling my bucket up because I had really depleted my bucket after a couple of years of just being in those stressful situations. And so I slowly started getting it back, but it wasn't until I can't even remember how many years after he broke his neck the second time, we were actually the story continues. We were actually hit by a drunk driver coming home from a date night, and I sustained minor brain trauma. And it was during that time that I had to do a lot of reflecting because I lost a ton of weight. I mean, I was down to like 97 pounds. My back was just in shambles, and my brain, I could not remember how to get downtown. I could not remember appointments. I did not remember just any short-term memory stuff was just gone. And I can remember laying there thinking, we are just wasting away. And I looked over at my husband, and he had gotten extremely thin throughout this whole process too. He was on the truck with me too, but I think because I wasn't his caregiver and providing so much of what he needed that I was before, he was withering away too. And I just had this distinct feeling or, impression come to me. If you guys do not change your lives, you will not be around by the holidays. And I knew right then that I had to make myself a priority. I had to stand up for the life that I wanted, as well as by doing that, I think that would help Nate and his situation. And so I just had to slowly start working back at it. I mean, it wasn't a quick fix because I was broke and I had to go through, 6 months of rehabilitation for my brain. And I had to eat all these Ensures and high caloric foods to try and get my body back to the strong person where I could get back to being a mom and a wife and a caregiver for Nate and all that. But it took something as major as that to finally, I think, really wake me up to the idea of you are worth it and you need to also live your life. You're not just living it to keep Nate alive.
Yeah. Oh, so much good stuff in there. I think that's crazy. So I didn't know that about the car accident and that you had your own share of physical challenges. Wow. Okay. So that must have been such a hard time, but I'm glad that did help because I think that sometimes it's so easy as women, as moms, and I imagine especially in a situation where you are a caregiver to your husband, it's so easy to put yourself last. And I love that you
Yes.
brought out that you had to make yourself a priority. I think that, in the early years of mothering, when we have young kids, it's so easy to feel that same way. We just, we can't all the time do all the things that we want to do to fill our own bucket. And so we do end up getting so depleted. But if we don't have anything, we don't have anything to give. And so I am glad that you brought that out, that, we have to do those things and then we're in a better place to be able to serve and to give. So I can only imagine what it would be like to be a caregiver to your husband. I know my husband's been sick just with a cold for like the last week. And even in that week, I mean, it changes the dynamic because he's needier and, he's
Right.
grateful and everything, but it's still different than, he's pulling his weight and I'm pulling my weight and we're equally yoked. We're a little bit unequally yoked right now. And when you are the caregiver full time, talk to us about what that's like to be a caregiver to your spouse.
I think number one, I am really lucky because Nate is positive. And I think a lot of people who go through life-altering tragedies or disabilities or illnesses, depression can really take over. And we have had our bouts with depression. We have gone down that road where it's really shook our marriage and we've struggled through it. But Nate overall is a really positive guy. And so to caregive for him, he is always so gracious and grateful for the service that I do give. With that being said, it is really hard for me to wear two different hats. I just have not been able to figure out the secret sauce to wearing a wife hat as well as a caregiver hat at the same time. And so we learned that we definitely have to have outside help come in. So every other day, we have a nurse come in and help him get ready and do showering and bathroom care that he needs every other day. And so that's really alleviated some of that stress from me, which we had just decided it has to happen. We have to make that a priority. And even the last couple of months, we have been in between caregivers, and I can tell how much more exhausted I am just trying to keep up with everything else. Because it's not like you just pop out of bed in the morning and you say, all right, what do I want to go make myself a breakfast? I'm just going to go to the gym, or, oh, I'm going to go read a book or do laundry. I'm getting out of bed. Oh, okay, I need to get him ready now. And it just starts your day off completely different. It's like I'm already on my job.
Exactly. I have a good friend whose husband has a seizure disorder. and wasn't able to drive for a long portion of their marriage. And even that really changed the dynamic in their marriage because it took away some of his independence. And I
Oh, yeah.
saw with their relationship that, she had other kids, and it almost became not that he was exactly like one more kid, but there was a little dynamic in their relationship that was almost like that because he'd say, I need a ride, just like your
Yeah.
kids do.
Yep.
And that totally changes that because instead of this, person who is equal and who's doing some of the driving and who's, has this same capacity and ability as you, as another adult, would normally have, he had a different situation and he wasn't able to do those things. And so she had to really stop herself from mothering him,
Oh,
from,
that
no, you can't do this.
completely. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I've seen that multiple times, even stuff that I have to battle, but also with friends or family members, is realizing when you're helping them or when you are enabling them. And that's something that we have really worked on, is that I don't want to be the mother and the father in this home. I definitely want the mother role, and I definitely want the spouse or wife role as well. And so Nate and I really work hard to try and keep those boundaries as clear cut as possible, so that he has to struggle with a lot of things. It would be a lot easier for me to do everything for him during the day, but that also doesn't help with his self-esteem or his self-worth. And it just makes me feel like more of that mother role instead of a spouse or wife role that I, for so many years, I actually could not have because he was sick or wasn't able to have it. And so I really have fought hard to get back that role of, let me be your wife, let me be your lover, let me be your friend, let me be, the one that you want to go out on dates with and court. And I feel like that's something that is oftentimes lost when you're stuck in a world of caregiving, is that you forget that there are many roles, because caregiving is such a needed thing that all of a sudden just becomes all encompassing, and you forget what you actually are here to do besides just caregive.
That's so good. I think that that's so important to remember that and to keep that, try to keep those boundaries. So how does it look? Do you keep are there specific jobs that Nate continues to do around the house, or things that, how do you do that when he's in this situation where he's in a wheelchair and can't do as much?
Yeah. So, number one, I think just making sure mentally he gets that opportunity to make decisions, gets that opportunity to have choice. And it's pretty funny to go to a public place, and as we walk in, people automatically look at me because I'm eye level, and they will ask me, oh, yes, is it, dinner for two? And I'll just sit there and wait for my husband to answer, because nobody ever looks at his level. And so I think even just by being patient and being quiet sometimes and allowing him a voice gives him that that role as a man that he needs to feel fulfilled, but also allows me to take sometimes a back seat, which is really nice too. We all want to have, sometimes we step up, and sometimes that we can take a back seat, and you just don't have that luxury sometimes as a caregiver. And so I think another thing that we have done in our life that has really helped keep those boundaries clear is to have a nurse, like I said, to have outside care and help come in, whether it is, because some people can't have outside, CNA or nurse come in and help, but just to have family come in and help. If it's a child that they're caring for and they need constant 24-hour care, just to have friends come in and offload some of that weight or responsibility, to have the ability to say, yes, I will take help, because I feel like that's something that's really hard to do sometimes, is you just feel like a charity case all the time, and you don't want to say, yes, please come help me with this. Or yes, would you please sweep my floor today? I know I'm an able-bodied person, but I'm exhausted from what's going on. And
Yeah.
so I think just being able to say yes and humbling ourselves to allow others to help really has helped even with those boundary lines as well.
That's good. And you're right. It is so hard to do. We don't want to admit even to ourselves that we need help. Even if we know we're just drowning, it's hard to say, yes, come over and help me. And then I know for me personally, when I finally do accept the help, it's hard not to feel guilty. Like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, why am I letting you help? I could do this myself. Yes, even though I'm exhausted and honestly need the help. But yeah, so that's good. And I love your first point about making decisions, also about letting him make decisions. I think that that's a wonderful point because I mean, obviously, he's still all there mentally, he's
Yes.
amazing. We had a great conversation and he's learned so much from this journey. And to be able to be the patriarch of the family and to be able to do those things and make those decisions and talk to the kids about important things and make decisions in the family, that's huge. And I think that that goes a long way toward feeling like you're doing something and that your role is still important, even though it's changed.
Well, and sometimes even as women, because we have that nurturing side of us, we just automatically take over, whether or not we have a disability or an illness in our home, period.
True.
We just
Very true.
automatically take it over. And it's really cool at night that my husband actually pushes down the hallway, goes and tucks the girls, our younger girls, into bed, and then comes back to our room where a lot of times I'll just be sitting on a laptop doing work at night or reading a book or just doing things that I at first struggled with because I thought, well, think how much easier it'd be for me to just walk down, tuck them in and come back to bed. But it gives him that sense of I am a part of this and I am pulling my weight. And even if I can't be out mowing lawns or I can't be out fixing a car or doing some of the things that we quote unquote call man work, he is being a husband and a father in so many other ways that a lot of dads don't do. And so I am really grateful for, his willingness to step up and still do so many of the things he does around our house.
That's awesome. And it speaks to your willingness to let him, like you said, because sometimes as women, we want to do it all. And sometimes we have a certain way we want it done. And then we do everything. And then we get mad when our husband's not doing it, even though we never allow him the space to do it. And so I think that speaks to your giving him that chance and letting him do that and not, oh no, it's okay, Nate, you stay here. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to put the girls to bed. Like, no, you got this. You go be the dad. So that's awesome.
It was definitely a process. It did not come quickly. So that is a learned, experience that I'm like, okay, this has to happen or burnout will happen. So I've definitely had to go through that refiner's fire to find out it has to take two of us. We are in it together, and to allow him to do that and to just step back and allow him to have that independence.
Well, that is so cool. So tell us some other things that you've learned along the way through this whole process and through all these changes in your family.
I think one of the things that always comes back to me is that sleep is very important. And I know that may sound so maybe not even what you were thinking I was going to say next, but I just have realized the importance of sleep and taking care of myself, eating right, being healthy myself, making sure I'm physically fit. It just all goes to helping my mental, abilities. And as soon as I had a few times where I was not receiving any sleep, I realized quickly I was going downhill. And so for anybody who's listening that is a caregiver, I would say figure out a way to get sleep, and that maybe asking friends or family, whoever it is, to help with that. But it is super important. And then the other thing that I really have felt like, since Nate's neck breaks, is that I've always wanted him to succeed. I mean, with him being a motivational speaker, I am always helping him to be the best Nate, to help him to make sure that he's ready for his presentations or he's able to catch his flights to go out and speak. And I realized that I wasn't living my own dreams. I was always worried about whether he would succeed or not. And so just even the last few years of my life, I've started to realize I need to let my own light shine. And by doing that, that will also allow his light to shine more, because we are a couple. We are in this together, and we are a lot brighter lights with two of us shining than just one of us in the shadows of the other.
Ah, that gave me chills. That's so good. Now that I'm glad you brought that up, because I do feel like some of the things that you're doing is they are allowing your light to shine brighter and to share the things that you've learned with other people. So talk to us. You recently did a retreat and you said you had plans to do more. So tell people about that.
Yeah, my first retreat that we are piloting is actually November 9th through the 12th. So it's still coming up, but we're in the super planning stages of it. And I just decided there's so much of a need for women to know how wonderful and powerful they are and to let their light shine. And so I'm doing an Living Unfrozen women's retreat, which Nate's book is called Unfrozen. So that's just kind of like our family motto, is living unfrozen, just living without fear, regret, and pushing through to our passions. And so I'm taking a group of 8 women, and we're going up to McCall, Idaho, in a little cabin, and we're going to just celebrate womanhood. We're going to do fun things at hot springs and do pottery and go to a fancy restaurant. But we're also going to be doing workshops of how to live into our passions, to find out the best way that we are to help this world, to help our families, to, go after the goals that we've kind of put on hold sometimes, that we do as women, as we get children and we have spouses, that we forget, hey, we have a lot of worth that we need to be giving back to the world. And by playing small, we aren't helping anyone. And so that's my big hope by having this retreat. And so I go into it with a little trepidation, because this is outside of my box. I have not done this. Nate is the motivational speaker. I'm normally the one that straightens his collar and puts his mic on. And so this is really me stepping out of my box and hoping that by doing this, other women will be able to feel empowered, and together we can start making a difference in our families and then moving out from there.
I love that. Well, obviously you have so much good stuff to share and will help these women. And, you're really practicing what you preach here about making yourself a priority by having this retreat that's allowing these other women to do the same, and not only to have fun, but to learn and to hopefully come away with this greater vision of who they want to be and what they want. And so that is very empowering. Tell people, if they are interested in your blog or your retreat, what your website is or your blog, so they can get more information.
Yeah, so my blog is heatherogden.com. I have a lot of our information also just on Nathan's Facebook page under Nathan Ogden. And more information will be coming as we get to this first one. I get a lot of feedback. I can tweak little things. I'm hoping to be able to do it, quarterly. It may actually be more than that, because I just sent out personal invitations to 10 people. And within a week, I was able to, fill up the 8 spots that I wanted to max out, and had more people coming in saying, this is so needed. Women need this so much. And so I'm really hoping that it will be exactly what women are looking for. And that is a retreat, a relaxation, but it's also rejuvenation to kind of get back going on the passions and joys that they have.
Oh, that's so awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear more, and maybe someday I'll get to join you, because that does sound really like a lot of fun. So Heather, thanks so much for being here. I really have had a good time talking to you. It's been fun.
Oh, it's been my honor. Thank you for asking me so much.
Yeah, and thank you, everyone. We will see you next time on Moms Who Know. Subscribe to Moms Who Know so you never miss an episode, and join the conversation on Facebook at facebook.com/Moms Who Know podcast.